Hello and welcome to Newsline. I'm Maya Bennett.
And I'm Dani Geary.
Today we'll be touching on the latest local and international news, including the decline in school camps, workplace racism and improved safety measures at St Kilda Pier.
Later in the program, we'll have live updates from the sport and the weather. But first, today's news.
One of Dorinda Cox's former staff members has said workplace allegations of bullying remain unresolved. The WA Senator announced her move from the Greens to Labor on Monday, now working alongside Anthony Albanese. The Prime Minister has repeatedly claimed the matter was dealt with appropriately at the time. But former staffer Esther Montgomery claims the 6 weeks she spent working for Dorinda Cox in 2024 were traumatising and the matter is unfinished.
From next term, principals across Victoria will have new powers to suspend or expel students, not just for what happens inside the classroom, but also for serious misbehaviour that takes place online or outside school grounds. Until now, Victorian school discipline policies only applied to incidents that occurred on school property. But starting from term 3, principals will be able to take action against students whose behaviour outside school or online poses a serious risk to the safety of others. The new policy comes in response to a rise in assaults and incidents of online bullying, including disturbing reports of AI-generated deepfake images targeting students and staff. Victorian Education Minister Ben Carroll says the move brings Victoria in line with states like New South Wales and South Australia.
Melbourne Victory has released a statement in regards to perceived over-policing of the A-League match on Saturday. The raucous pre-game event saw a police officer assaulted and flares ignited on Swan Street in Richmond. The club claims the heavy police presence has created a sense of fear among its fans and protest against the vilification of the football culture. And on Tuesday, Elon Musk publicly denounced Donald Trump's signature tax and spending bill, calling it a disgusting abomination. The legislation was passed in May and includes multi-trillion-dollar tax breaks and increases the US government's ability to borrow money. This is the first public disagreement Musk has engaged in with Trump, whose administration Musk parted with at the end of May.
As temperatures drop and winter settles in across the state, Victorians are being urged to roll up their sleeves to protect themselves against a surge in respiratory illnesses, including the flu and COVID-19. With over 18,000 cases of the flu already recorded in Victoria by late May, authorities are now advising the vaccination is vital now more than ever. The flu vaccine is free for those eligible and can be given alongside the COVID booster, with health officials recommending combining both vaccinations to bolster immunity during the colder months.
School camp operators say they have noticed a decline in the number and length of school camps in Victoria in recent years. While cost of living is hard hitting parents, schools are grappling with new provisions to give teachers time in lieu for out-of-hours work. Reporter Charlotte Wilkes has more.
It's a rite of passage for thousands of Australian kids. Muddy shoes, marshmallows and memories that last a lifetime. But school camps like this are under threat as schools struggle to afford the cost of time in lieu, putting the experience on the chopping block.
We found that it has added cost to schools coming on camp, so some schools have trimmed their camping budget. So rather than staying 3 nights, they might stay 2, or instead of 2 nights, 1 night.
Grant Laidlaw runs 2 camps north of Ballarat and says fewer bookings are threatening a tradition that schools and students have long valued.
We're not despondent, we just feel like this is a bit of a glitch in the camping industry because we know how important school camps are for children, and the science is showing that, the studies are showing that.
While the Fair Work Commission required the state government to add $100 million into school budgets so camps could continue, for many it's not enough.
Still committed to running them each year. However, due to those factors, only our Year 6s get to go.
Isabella Wilkes, a Victorian primary school teacher, thinks while school camps are vital for kids, getting paid time in lieu is a sign of respect.
Just acknowledges the amount of work we're doing. It also shows respect for our time and helps us with the whole work-life balance, which is so important if we want to keep teachers in the position.
But it's an experience Grant Laidlaw hopes government funding can continue.
Camping is really beneficial, and I see high energy kids come on camp who may be struggling in the States in the school system, but they come on camp and they excel.
For some students, it's more than a break from the classroom. It's a chance to shine. And while the future of school camps remains uncertain, their impact for many is unforgettable. I'm Charlotte Wilkes reporting for RMIT Newsline.
Reporter Daria Mohseni is at Melbourne University today to scope the students of the Palestine public meeting.
Hi Daria, you've been at the meeting for over an hour now. Can you tell us what has developed?
Hi Dani. So yes, the meeting began at 2 p.m. today. I'm currently just standing outside of the meeting committee room where the uni students for Palestine at Melbourne University are currently discussing both the aid distribution in Gaza, which was unsuccessful over the past week, and on top of that, the 2 Melbourne University students who are facing expulsion after protesting outside of a professor's office. On top of that, 4 students are expected to be suspended. However, until then, they are urged to attend all their classes until that expulsion is finalised.
How have other students been responding to the Vice-Chancellor's decision for expulsion?
So what we've heard so far is there's a lot of frustration on the ends of the students. They are experiencing a lot of anger towards the professors and the Vice-Chancellor who have decided to expel the students, and they are also expected to face trial, unfortunately. We spoke to an RMIT student, Sophia, earlier on, who shared her thoughts on this.
And look, as long as they're doing it like passively, like you're not going to be like violent or anything. Like, I'm not too sure on the like exact circumstances of it, but I think if people are just speaking about an issue, I don't see why there should be a problem with doing that on university property.
The Melbourne University Pro-Palestine Union is frustrated over this outcome. How are other universities responding?
So all universities, which have, including Monash, Melbourne and RMIT, have their own student unions run, pro-Palestine ones. All of them have a huge social media presence and they've been posting a lot of frustration over this. Also a lot of fear themselves that they won't be able to exercise their freedom of speech themselves on campus and outside of campus as a student union group. RMIT is expected to hold a protest on June 8th. There was also a protest expected to happen today, but that was unfortunately cancelled. So we're hoping to see a lot of protests and movements for pro-Palestine from these students.
Daria, do you think there will be increasing consequences for students who choose to engage in these movements?
Based on what is happening here at Melbourne University with the senior leadership team, which is including the Vice-Chancellor who has decided to expel those 2 students, we're expected to see an implementation of firmer repercussions for students trying to exercise their freedom of speech on campus. However, I think regardless of that, students will continue to protest and create these movements for Palestine.
Thanks, Daria. That was Daria Messeni reporting live from the University of Melbourne.
After the break, we'll be bringing you international news with Sarah Toomey.
Welcome back to Newsline. I'm Dani Giri.
And I'm Maya Bennett.
We'll now take our attention to international news with Sarah Toomey.
Thank you, Dani. To our lead international story, more than 200 Pakistani prisoners have escaped from jail after a series of earthquakes hit the country yesterday afternoon. The jailbreak began when hundreds of prisoners were permitted to leave their cells following tremors, where they began stealing weapons from guards and were forced open the main gate of the prison. At least one prisoner was killed and 3 guards were injured in the escape, with it being the biggest jailbreak in Pakistan's history. 80 of the escaped prisoners have been returned to police custody, with existing charges expected to be escalated as a result of the break. At least 27 Palestinians have been killed in an attack on a Gaza aid site by Israeli forces for the 3rd day in a row, this according to reports from local health authorities. The Israeli Defense Force has said that they opened fire on a group of individuals who they deemed a threat near a US and Israeli-backed humanitarian food bank in Rafah. The recently opened sites are aiming to combat the widespread hunger currently existing in war-torn Gaza. A statement from the United Nations Human Rights Office condemned the attacks as a possible war crime and unconscionable. The Vanuatu government have promised to re-evaluate its citizenship process. This comes following reports that self-proclaimed misogynist Andrew Tate brought so-called Vanuatu Golden Passport in the same month he was arrested in Romania on charges of human trafficking. The controversial and lucrative process run by the Vanuatu government of citizenship by investment scheme has historically attracted criminals evading international law enforcement. Vanuatu government officials have said that they would look into Tate's citizenship status and do not wish to encourage people of questionable backgrounds to be granted citizenship. South Korea's Liberal opposition leader Lee Jae-myung has won the nation's snap presidential election. He will be the successor of impeached former President Yoon Suk-yeol, who was removed from office following his declaration of martial law late last year. Mr. Lee won 49.42% of the vote and defeated main rival Kim Moon-soo from Mr. Yoon's Conservative People Power Party. Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof has announced he will step down from office, mere hours after far-right leader Geert Wilders quit the coalition party, leading the nation into a parliamentary collapse. Speaking on late Tuesday afternoon, Mr. Wilders said that he would be removing himself from the governing coalition. This was a result of his demands for the halt on existing asylum migration and the closing of asylum shelters not being met by his fellow party members. Announcing his departure on X, saying no signature under our asylum plans, the PVV leaves the coalition. The country will likely now move to an election period, as well as delays on global decision-making.
So as you said, Sarah, the Netherlands has now entered a period of political uncertainty. What does this mean for the new rise of right-wing agendas in the Netherlands?
Well, Wilders won on one of the biggest margins that the country has ever seen in last year's July election, with the right-wing politics taking a large lead in the Netherlands at the moment. But since his election into office, it has dropped significantly due to his anti-Muslim rhetoric, and more people are moving from far-right politics into more centre-right politics. And for the first time ever in the Netherlands government, the Labour and Greens party are on par with this right-wing government.
Thanks, Sarah. Could you tell us a little bit more about how the parliament has fallen apart?
Well, Wilders claims that is all a lack of support from inside his coalition party. The coalition in the Netherlands is quite different to ours here at home, where we are consisting of 2 parties, whereas in the Netherlands it consists of 4. The issue with this is that you have lots of differing opinions and it's difficult to get legislation pushed through. That is the main reason that Wilders did not feel that he was supported by his co-party members, and he has left an already very fragile parliament in an even more delicate position.
What does this dramatic course of action from Mr. Wilders mean for the coalition?
So the nation's now going to enter into a period of election, not even a year after its previous one taking place in July of 2024. The Netherlands is a committed member of NATO as well, so its global relations will be impacted by this, as they will not be able to commit to large-scale policy while they do not have a strong leader in place. The new election will also display a new change in public beliefs. Obviously the last one showed a rise in right-wing beliefs, but since its election, there might be a change in the public decision-making.
Has migrant and asylum been a controversial topic in the Dutch Parliament for a while?
It has. So migration and asylum in the Netherlands is really high due to their location along a coastline. They are easily accessible by those who are in need. There are thousands of migrants and asylum seekers, both political and economic ones, entering the country each year. They have one of the biggest intakes of asylum seekers and refugees in all of Europe, and that it was a highly contentious topic at last year's election, with lots of the politicians making promises to cut back on this, and that's what won a lot of the right-wing parliamentarians their votes. With many candidates, they promised a decrease in intake, which is why it's a little bit hypocritical that now Weimar has been left out of Parliament after not being able to follow through.
Thank you for your time, Sarah. That's the international news for today.
Thanks, Sarah. It's been one of Melbourne's busiest summers on the bay, with St Kilda Pier drawing record crowds after its major redevelopment. But following a recent drowning, the council is now reviewing safety infrastructure ahead of the next holiday season. Ruby Silverback has the story.
It's been one of Melbourne's busiest summers on the bay, with St Kilda Pier drawing record crowds after its major redevelopment. But following a recent drowning, the council is now reviewing safety infrastructure ahead of the next holiday season. After a $53 million upgrade, St Kilda Pier has become a summer hotspot, attracting thousands of locals and tourists, boasting panoramic bay views, smooth decking, and the rare urban presence of a thriving penguin colony.
In terms of tourism though, just maintaining the beach amenity and making it look clean, let the council contractors do an excellent job of that.
A fatal drowning incident near the pier in January reignited conversations about safety, particularly around signage and supervision. The Port Phillip City Council says safety remains a priority as planning continues for the 2025 summer season.
One of the things we want to do is to make sure that there's more, for next summer, there's more lifesavers on site and on board to make sure the place is safe.
More upgrades are already in motion, with the next phase of construction to begin in July. Beachgoers can look forward to a Bay Trail safety upgrade, an extension of the pier to Jacker Boulevard, improved emergency services access to the new entrance, and an extension of public lighting along St Kilda Promenade. As summer approaches, the council hopes these upgrades will help to restore public confidence in the pier, ensuring it remains not just an icon, but a safe place for all who visit.
There's no better place, I think, in Melbourne to be enjoying the water, the sea, the bay. St Kilda sunset is always something extraordinary.
Ruby Silverback, RMIT Newsline.
And now we're going to have a short break. We'll be back momentarily with more news from around Victoria.
Welcome back to Newsline. I'm Dani Geary.
And I'm Maya Bennett.
The workplace is the most frequent environment where racism takes place. As a result, community leaders are starting to find their own solutions to the problem. Miles Earle has more.
Yes, so much love.
United under a single cause, Australians from different backgrounds and walks of life are fighting against racism in any way they can. Racism remains a widespread and deeply rooted problem in Australia, and many are demanding action against it now. Hathumi Gatwiri, an associate professor at Southern Cross University, is one of the few who are actively forming solutions for this problem.
Not every negative interaction or experience is traumatic. So I just really wanted to start a conversation about the linear aspect of what race and racism feels like for people who experience that.
Her recent racial dignity framework offers a practical and theoretical approach to deal with racism. However, while these efforts gain momentum, one area remains stagnant to change: the workplace. A recent report found that 9 out of 10 Australians believe organisations should take action against racism, while just 27% said their organisations are trying to prevent it. Doug Cronin, co-founder of Our Race Community, spoke about why workplace racism occurs.
The systems that are there to protect the institutions. So even if we have complaint mechanisms within workplaces, those complaint mechanisms, HR policies, are there to protect the organisation rather than to protect the people.
Melbourne is one of the largest multicultural cities in the world, with an estimated 30% of Victoria's population being born overseas. However, there has been little to no legislative change from the Australian government to push for equality in 30 years. Organisations educating themselves is one of the first steps to understanding the problem and solving it.
You can see already across the world, in the US and here, how our differences are being weaponised. So we need ways, we need language, we need concepts, we need frameworks.
Miles Earle, reporting for RMIT Newsline.
We may have just entered winter, but for some communities, their seasonal summer pools still remain at the forefront of their minds. Naya Barnes reports.
When the school was here, we had kids in the pool all the time, parents in the pool, and then when the school closed, the heart of the town sort of broke, and then we still had the pool. And then the council said it's too expensive and there's not a big enough attendance, so they decided to close the pool.
With pools having an operational lifespan of approximately 50 years, Royal Lifesaving Society Australia has been conducting research into the ageing pool epidemic around the nation.
So that research identified about 500 public community pools that are nearing or have reached the end of their functional lifespan, and found that we needed to replace those assets with something new or find a way to extend the life of those assets.
For communities facing upcoming refurbishment, the challenge isn't just financial. There's also increasing pressure to choose more sustainable solutions for these pools.
The most environmentally friendly pool is probably no pool. The second most environmentally friendly pool is the pool that you've already got. So, we're really encouraging of things like relining existing pools.
Even with these new options, getting investment in aquatic facilities is a challenge, with around 64% of cost falling to local government. However, passion for the local pool continues to run deep, especially for the many memorial pools around the nation.
Memorial swimming pools very often built by the community, voluntary labour, they donated materials or they fundraised for those materials, and they were built to commemorate the diggers. So they were built to commemorate their fathers, their grandfathers who died in World War I, World War II. And so that's where we see a lot of that passion come through from community, because they're saying, this is our pool.
If they take this away completely, the town has nothing.
In towns across the state, the story is the same. Ageing infrastructure, stretched budgets, and locals waiting to see if their pool will survive the next summer. Naya Barnes, RMIT Newsline.
So, Maya, is there anything else that's grabbed your attention in the news in the past couple of days?
Well, Dani, it's important to note that it's actually alpine season as of now.
Oh. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Do you happen to ski?
Well, no, I've actually never been to the snow. Funny that, I know, but maybe 2025 is the year for me. Do you go to the snow?
Oh, Look, my relationship with the slopes is a bit slippery, if you'll pardon the pun.
Oh, not at all. I think we love a good snow fun here. But that does take me to a bit more of a serious note. It is a good reminder for those travelling to snow resorts for the alpine regions to remember your snow chains. And of course, more importantly, to plan ahead of your journey. Nothing worse than getting to the snow and not knowing what conditions are like. So yeah, just a bit of an encouragement to anyone heading out to the snow this season to make sure you plan your journey and you've got all the right equipment. And that wraps up our first part of Newsline this afternoon.
We'll be back at 4:30. Oh, no.
That was good.